Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of 219 GreenConnect, where we talk about the environment and green living in Northwest Indiana. I am your host, Kathy Sipple, and today I am very pleased to have with me Nance Klehm. Nancy is a steward of the earth. She's an ecological systems designer, a landscaper, horticultural consultant, and permacultural grower, as well as an in-demand consultant, speaker, and teacher. She is respected internationally for her work on land politics and growing for fertility. Nancy's recent undertaking, The Ground Rules, is a unique community and earth-building initiative that seeks multiple communities to work with. The Ground Rules involves creating community-run soil centers that gather organic waste from local businesses. Community members are directly involved and asked to invest real labor and time commitment to the project in order to create a long-lasting local relationship with soil and soil issues. She is the founder of Social Ecologies, an organization that acts as an umbrella for a variety of ongoing ecological and system regenerating projects. She's actually got a very extensive biography that I'm afraid in our half-hour session we don't have enough time to review in depth. But with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nancy and just thank her for joining me today. Welcome.
Hi, Kathy. Hi.
So, Nancy, you live in Chicago, is that right?
I live between Chicago and a little rural community called Orangeville, Illinois. That's in the driftless area in the northwest corner of Illinois, very close to Wisconsin and Iowa.
Gotcha. Well, I have lived in Wisconsin, and I now live in northwest Indiana. I've also enjoyed living in the Chicago Loop for several years, and I came across you via YouTube, I believe. I was fortunate enough to find one of your videos where you're doing a foraging expedition, and you were leading people through some areas of the Loop that I recognized and finding wild edibles, and I was just amazed. I would have never thought of doing that kind of activity in Chicago, and I just thought you were so fascinating, and then found out you were also interested in soil health, which is one of my key passions as well. So I just was delighted when you accepted this invitation for an interview. So let's talk about whichever one you'd like to first. I think the two pretty much go hand in hand. Soil health and wild edibles certainly thrive with better soil. But what got you interested in all of this?
Well, I grew up rural, and I grew up on 500 acres, and I come from a long line of horticulturalists, and so there's always been this attention paid to my relationship with the earth, whether it was for, kind of production on a nursery that I grew up with, but also we had a large vegetable garden, and we kept a lot of animals, and I've always seen myself intertwined with that. I've never seen a separation like a lot of people struggle with. And so it's always been something I've had. And then when I moved to an urban center, when I went to college and moved to an urban center, I just realized how, in spite of all these people, how lonely they were. And I started going for walks in less human inhabited places, so old industrial sites and long walks along train tracks, and I was just kind of attracted to these more open-ended, less scripted areas of the urban landscape to try to find some peace, solace, community of others being non-humans that I was so used to when I was growing up. And that's kind of how it all started, and I started inviting people to take those walks with me, and that was quite some time ago. And that's kind of where the urban foraging thing that I do came into being.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit new to the wild edibles game, and although I live in a relatively traditional suburban kind of area, we're blessed with a lot of larger, acreage, natural parcels around my area. And I'm just amazed now that my eyes are open to it, how much of the landscape that we look at is edible, including those, what some people consider to be pesky dandelions. I tried my hand at making dandelion root coffee last week, and it was pretty darn good, and made braised dandelion greens for dinner, and they were delicious. So I just, again, found you when I was out there looking for more information, and I thought, wow, that's really cool that you're doing it in an urban setting and you're showing people there. So it's definitely something I'd like to do here. And the other part of your, mission that you're on with this Ground Rules, I think is just great. I went to a local food summit here in Valparaiso, Indiana, a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to head up a table discussion about food waste as part of the food system. And we had the tiniest amount of people at our table compared to food security and, working with growers and this, that, and the other thing. And I just see this as a really overlooked area that I have been passionate about, and I just was so curious how you developed that same passion and how you've been able to get, your project off the ground as far as it is right now.
Yeah, well, again, since I grew up on land, I've always understood that there's a relationship and a dependence on it, and because of that dependence, there's always been a great humility kind of instilled, because the soil is such a mysterious cosmos of dark things, and so I've always been kind of blown away and wowed by what kind of the miracle and what it brings forth every season, and what it receives at the end of the season to make more of itself in decomposition and decay. So I've always been really respectful of it. And as a gardener, when I first came to cities, I started working in setting up community gardens, which was one of my first jobs, is set up a bunch of community gardens for a nonprofit. I was appalled at the terrible disregard to soil, everything from contamination, but also just compaction and salting and just total disregard. And there was layers and layers and layers of that. And it necessitated gloves, and if you didn't, you get cut. And it was a really large question. And so I've been involved in growing food in urban areas for 25 years. But I felt like the conversation wasn't deep enough. And it was also finally, I'd say maybe 5-10 years ago, there was more younger people attracted to it. So I decided to turn my focus to soil and to healing our soils and building their fertility through returning organic waste to them and healing them through bioremediation. And so I had a proposal for this project, and I got a grant through the Annenberg Foundation, and they wanted me to do the project in Philadelphia, which means I had to travel to Philadelphia to do a project that can pretty much happen anywhere, and I would have liked it to happen in some place I lived, but I did it in Philadelphia. And then about 2.5 years ago, I was able to launch it in Chicago with no grant, just totally by hook or by crook, and have been running this project where we gather organic waste from local businesses and restaurants. It's a fee-based system, so we get paid to do that, and then we build out these decentralized neighborhood-based soil centers where we build and teach how to build very good compost, thermophilic compost, and we leave it there for the community that we're working in, since we don't need to have it ourselves. So we kind of partner with community groups and become the techs and kind of the resident soil people and kind of leave them a little bit better trained in composting. We also do these bioremediation workshops where we teach people about mushroom cultivation and how to work with mushrooms, plants, and microbes together to help heal contaminated and disturbed soils of cities, so they can be better for just general public health and animal health, human health, plant health.
There's so much you just said in there that I've got like 10 follow-up questions probably. But I think I saw you post something recently about violets and their power to help with bioremediation. Is that correct? Am I correct in remembering that?
Right. We're working with about 24 phytoremediators, which are plant remediators. And some of them have white papers on them to say how they've been proven scientifically to do this cleaning, and other ones don't. But we're testing them. There's a good case for them being good remediators. In the case of violets, it is known as a remediator of metals, and as an herbalist and forager, I also know that violets are delicious and very good on the digestive system, very soothing on the digestive system, and also have some soothing qualities for colds and flus. And so I think it's besides being really beautiful, it's a plant that's healing our soils and providing us medicine. So I love working with kind of overlooked common vegetation and their service to the broader ecological service.
Yeah, I've always liked them. I like them a little more now that I know that. That's really very cool. Yeah, and then my other questions, I guess, have to do with, creating these community soil centers. I'm just really curious about both the, waste production end, how you were received by, the restaurant communities, and also how the neighborhoods took to placing one of these centers within their neighborhoods. Because quite honestly, I'd really love to reach out and do something similar in my area, and I'm just so curious about what you found helped you in your approach.
Well, first of all, I'll tell you, we're producing a manual this summer, and it'll be kind of a case study, but also a lot of how-tos. So look out for that. That could help spread this model all over the place. And I'm kind of a Tom Sawyer type person. I really am good at getting people involved in things that they wouldn't, if they thought about it, might not get involved in. But I kind of make it fun and engaging, and folks jump in. But and get involved in food swap, and that it can take more composting. But I am usually asked to move into a neighborhood. I think I've asked once to work with somebody, and all subsequent soil centers have been based on being invited by groups, because they really see a need for more compost to be produced for their garden and for these backyards and maybe other projects. And they don't necessarily know how to do it at the scale we're doing it, because we do it at a much more ambitious scale than most people conceptualize of composting. Like, we make a lot of it. So they're really happy to have us on site to kind of take care of something so they can focus on their garden piece. So it's a little bit about making this attractive, and a little bit about being really, really useful, and then people seeing the project one place and then wanting to have it happen in their own neighborhoods.
Great.
So it does kind of spread by just the practical manifestation of it. And I try to have a fun and kind of, fun or funny face to that, to kind of help engage people in the area that they might feel overwhelmed by or just, generally intimidated by.
You had me at food slop. So I might be one of the few strange people really oddly attracted to composting, but I just think, wow, I last year, just about a year ago, actually had the chance to visit a landfill down in Newton County, Indiana, and it's the second largest, by volume in the country outside of one in Nevada. And, it's nearly 700 acres, and I want to say that almost 40% of the contents there were paper and or food waste. And I just think, wow, this is going to be sealed up in cells, and then it's entombed in this landfill, and it could have been released, back to the soil and made really great compost. And by the time it's in landfill, it's just too late. So I just see it as kind of wanting to liberate organic stuff from the landfill and train people to think about it in a different way, not as waste, but something that we really need for healthy food and healthy soil. So I really commend you for your work. And I know you've got a big project and a big drive going on right now with this ground rules. So do you want to give a little shout out for people to just tell them how they can find out more about your project if they would like to give you some support?
Sure. Well, the ground rules is run by my business called Social Ecologies, and we work on a lot of water and soil issues on a neighborhood scale, and a community scale, because education is our focus. So if you go to socialecologies.net and look at the ground rules, it's on our front page right now. We're doing an Indiegogo campaign called Feed Your Soil, which is kind of like feed your mind, in a lot of ways. So please visit us. We really need help. We're crawling towards the finish line, and we might not make it. And I've been thinking about what it means to not make a crowdfunding campaign based on soil compared to, $370,000 being made, given to a gizmo that never gets made. So it's, we're still in the minority, us who are working towards public health and environmental health and human health and animal health. So if you believe in us, visit Feed Your Soil at Indiegogo in the next 2 weeks, because our campaign is ending and we need your help.
Well, we'll certainly do our part to spread it on our end, and hopefully this podcast will reach some new people that are concerned about soil health. You are more than halfway there. You're at 56% as of today, so I sure, wish you all the best with that. I think it's a great cause, and certainly important, more important, I think, than a lot of people realize, and, especially to get the full complement of nutrients back out of our food. I think that's really important. I think, you would know more about that than I do, but, our food can only really give us what we put into it, right?
Exactly, and I think that, that's where a lot of restaurants who are really concerned about the farm-to-table piece and are trying to source things really carefully, those are a lot of the ones that we're working with. And because they realize that, in the past 50 years that our nutritional content of our foods has actually dropped significantly. And there's this kind of slow, there's arguments about this slow kind of malnutrition that human beings are suffering, and we're trying to compensate it by eating more. And it's more about not having the nutrient density in the foods that we are eating. So our bodies are looking for those lost minerals and those lost nutrients by eating more instead of eating better. And part of eating better is actually building our soils so they can put that nutrition into the food that we take from them and be resilient to droughts and flooding and all these kinds of things. It all ties into, it ties into everything. It ties into domesticated animals we keep for meat, and it ties into even domesticated animals like bees, but also the wild animals that we enjoy and maybe at times eat. They're all dependent on what the landscape provides, and so we can get behind supporting that, then everything's going to be better for it. So it's really about how we align ourselves in this world and what we're working towards building.
And it's not an awful lot of money that you're looking to raise, quite frankly. And with it, you're looking to do a lot of things. I'm looking at your Indiegogo page right now. You're looking at building out community soil centers at 2 locations, continue working on your demonstration remediation site, publication of that ground rules manual that you mentioned, I believe, just a little earlier, hands-on workshop on mushroom cultivation and urban bioremediation, and organizing a town hall meeting concerning local soils, which I think all of those seem like very, very worthy causes and a lot of good to come out of, a relatively small amount of money. So if you're concerned about soil health and you're in the listening audience, I'd really urge you to visit Nancy's site. Again, you can get there by going to socialecologies.net, and you can get right to the Ground Rules Project from her homepage. You just click the Support Our Indiegogo campaign. It takes you right there, and you can read all about the great work she's doing. She's got an informational video there, too, that you can learn a little bit more. And, I'm going to cross my fingers for you. I think we all need more of this great work being done, and I personally would love to get my hands on your, ground rules, basically. How do you get this thing off the ground with cities and with communities and work with, the powers that be? I know we're not awfully far apart in geography, but we do have a state line between us, and one thing I've come up against is the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, otherwise known as IDEM. They've got some, codes that you need to follow. There is a little bit of fear around food waste composting on a large scale. People see it as a dump, and it's really not a dump if it's managed well. And it sounds like at the scale you're doing and with the level of expertise you bring, it's definitely not that kind of a situation. Could you describe what people would see? Like, what are some of the methods that you use, or what do these sites look like?
Yeah, first of all, I should say I work at the city and state level on composting. So I'm not just an advocate and an activist, but I suffer through working on policy. Mm-hmm. But we built these to code, like their regulation composting bins. They're pretty deluxe. They're expensive to build. They're rat proof, and they look great. And they're also pretty large, like 8 cubic yards. So we're looking at 8 truckloads of pickup truckloads of finished compost. And we build them larger as well. We build them in increments of 8 cubic yards. So we have a site that has 16 cubic yards that's being built. That's a lot of compost, and it easily covers most community gardens. So they're great looking, and they're rat proof, and I would say that, we know how to build compost so it doesn't stink. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of built more ambitious. I've done more ambitious and more critical composting when I worked in ecological sanitation in Haiti. So I know how to build healthy compost out of sick people's waste. So we kind of employ some pretty it's a very conscious and kind of a kind of technical process that we bring to the table. We don't just toss things in this box, because we really want people to get a little bit more sophisticated and kind of interested in their compost, almost as if they were cooking a meal. Mm-hmm. That level of care and concern about their ingredients and how they come together. So that's what our compost sites look like. And then our remediation sites, most of them you wouldn't even know we were remediating there. It just looks like some gardening's happening with native plants, maybe some other cultivated or spontaneous vegetation on site. And then our demonstration remediation site is has a lot of signs, and it's kind of a self-touring site. So if you're ever in Chicago, you can take a walk through 24 hours a day and kind of learn about urban bioremediation by coming to our site, where we have 22 different plots testing both plants and mushrooms.
Great. Well, again, I know you're just about to go out with your crew and get some work done for the day. So I appreciate you taking the time to be with me before you start your journey out and do your good things in the earth. And so if you're just joining us, you have been listening to another episode of 219 GreenConnect. I'm your host, Kathy Sipple, and my guest today has been Nance Klehm. And she has been telling us about her work with the Ground Rules. It's an Indiegogo campaign. She is raising money to do all kinds of great things with soil health in Chicago. So please go check out her site. Again, you can get there by going to socialecologies.net, and you can get to her Indiegogo campaign right from that front page. I do want to mention that our show has been made possible in part by cothrive.org. Cothrive is an online intentional community of innovators. It's equal parts virtual makerspace, think tank, co-working, and new media training ground. So it provides inspiration, networking, and business coaching for members with great ideas that need help getting the word out. We've got a free 30-day trial, so if you'd like to check that out, please visit bit.ly/cothrive30 to get your free 30-day trial. After that, it's just an affordable $30 per month to get ongoing sustainable coaching for your business or new idea. So, Nancy, thanks again. Anything else you'd like to share before we end for today?
Get dirty.
What was that?
Folks.
Get dirty. I love it. I think I'm going to go play in some dirt today based on that advice. And possibly do some mushroom hunting. That might be a good thing to do today as well.
Oh, my gosh. I went morel hunting last night and found a bunch of yellow morels. It's pretty
thrilling. We found some on Sunday, had them for Mother's Day dinner, so that was really, really nice. I love this time of year. So again, thanks for all the great work that you do, and thanks for making time in your busy schedule to be with us today and share your projects.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye, Kathy.
Bye-bye.